You've probably heard that selling options is safer because it wins more, right? But here's the real question, and think about this carefully. What are you really risking when selling options? I'm asking because many new traders all fall into the same exact trap. That's why today I'm going to show you a quick but very real example how one bad trade can blow up an account. And of course, I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to show you how to use tried and tested risk management techniques for different trades and outlooks, and the tools that you can use to help make better trading decisions. So let's start with the most basic distinction that changes everything: buying versus selling options. Now, I'm sure you've heard what options are, but in case you haven't, they offer the right but not the obligation to either buy or sell an asset at a strike price on or before an expiration date. Now, that definition sounds clean and simple, but the risk behind it is very different depending on which side of the trade you're on. When you buy options, your risk is fixed. You pay a premium, and that's it. Now, you can be wrong, even very wrong, and you still know the worst case outcome going in. Let me give you an example. Let's say with the SPY. This ETF is trading at $686, and you buy an at the money $686 strike call for $15 a share. That's $1,500 per contract, and that's because options are for 100 shares. Now, if you're wrong and the ETF trades below the strike at expiration, that $1,500 gone. If you buy 3 options and you're wrong, that's $4,500 gone. Very uncomfortable, and it hurts, but it's contained. But when you sell options, the risk, it's much greater. Now you're collecting a small premium up front, but the potential loss can be very large. Sometimes it can be technically unlimited. I mean, naked calls have theoretically unlimited losses, and even cash-secured puts can sting if you sell too many. Let me give you an example. Let's say you were short a put on the SPY at $686. You'd collect today, at the time of recording, $10.73 a share, or $1,073 per contract. If everything goes well, the option expires worthless and you keep the premium. But if the trade doesn't go in the right direction and you get assigned, you'll be buying $68,600 worth of the SPY. But if you'd sold 3 of those and got assigned, that's more than $200,000. Now, it's not too bad if you really wanted to own that stock or ETF at that price, but what if the SPY was now trading at $600 when you got assigned? That means you just got into a position that's already negative. So yeah, time decay works in the seller's favor, but leverage works against you. And this is where a big misconception shows up. When selling options, high win rates, they feel safe. But a high win rate doesn't mean that you're risking small amounts. It just means that the losses are hidden until they're not. And because sellers take on asymmetrical risk, sizing isn't optional. And another thing most traders miss here is correlation. You can size each trade correctly and still be massively overexposed if all of your trades rely on the same market move. Let me give you an example. 5 bullish short puts on similar AI stocks isn't 5 different bets necessarily. They're one bet in disguise. For that reason, we need to think about position sizing. This is how much risk is in a single trade. Not which stock or option you pick, but how big the bet is. And position sizing matters more to long-term results than picking the right trade. That's because you can be right on the direction and still end up at a loss, sometimes at a very big loss if the positioning is too large. You can also be wrong plenty of times and end up just fine as long as your position sizes are controlled. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take that previous SPY short put again as an example. $686 strike price, 30 days to expiration, $1,073 per contract. Now, here's the problem. Most new option sellers, they don't think in terms of exposure, at least not usually. They think in terms of premium collected, and that is a fatal mistake. See, it's not a $1,000 position. That's a potentially $68,000 obligation. And if you had $100,000 in your account, well, you're essentially risking nearly 70% of that on that one trade alone. And that is why position sizing should always start with the maximum loss, not the probability of profit. Now, a common rule that the institutional traders often follow is to risk no more than 1 to 2% of their portfolio on any given trade. Now, personally, if I'm more bullish on the trade, maybe I'd go as high as 5% or maybe even as high as 10% on a very rare occasion. But remember, what happens if things go badly? That's why proper positioning will make or break your account. And it's the very same thing for other credit spread trades. You look at the maximum loss, compare it to what you have in the account, and then decide how many you want to sell. And this decision should happen before you enter the trade, not after it moves against you. Every short option trade should always be opened with a clear plan for what you'll do if you got assigned. Now, calculating the maximum potential loss on a credit spread, it's easy, and I talk a lot about it up here in this video. But you know what's even easier? Using Barchart's option screener. You get to see the max loss right here, as well as a bunch of other important metrics. No need for Excel or your calculator app. No need for any guesswork. All actionable data points are right here. Now, how would that look when you're selling covered calls, for example? Let's say you've got 500 shares of Apple and you want to earn a premium while you keep these shares for the long term. Inexperienced traders will usually default to, let's say, selling 5 calls on Apple, which equals 500 full shares on one strike price, say $300, and the same expiration date, let's say March 6th. So let's say March 6th comes around and Apple is now trading at $305. Well, guess what? Those 5 calls are all in the money, and there go your shares. But what if you structured it differently? What if instead on one trade, you laddered your 500 shares across 3 or 5 different strike prices, each higher than the last one? Or maybe you can sell them at all the same strike price, but at different expiration dates. That way, if you get assigned on one, you still get to keep the rest. And then you'll have time to assess what you're going to do next, if you're going to continue risking the remainder of your shares for assignment or just buy the close the remainder of your position. And this is where position sizing reduces the risk of being forced into a single all or nothing outcome. And since we're talking about income strategies, let's consider how selling options can reduce your cost basis. Let's say you want to buy 100 shares of Apple at some point, but you think Apple right now is a bit expensive. It's currently trading at $276. So let's say you decide to sell a cash-secured put. This strategy allows you to get paid to wait for the stock to potentially trade below a specific price. So let's say you'd be happy to buy 100 shares of Apple for $260 a share. The best way to do this would be to sell a $260 strike on Apple, say that expires in the next 30 days, so you can maximize the time value. As you can see here, the $260 strike puts are trading at $2.48 a share. So if you sold the $260 strike put and you got assigned, your cost basis for those Apple shares is $260 minus $2.48, making it $257.52. But let's say 30 days pass and the put options expire worthless. In fact, Apple now goes to $300. If you sold another put but adjust the strike price higher to $270, and now this time you get $5. That means you've now collected a total of $7.48 in premium across 2 cycles without ever owning a single share. And that's the power of stacking premiums over time. Now, let's say you do get assigned this time around at $270. Your cost basis is now $262.52, much closer to your preferred original price. Imagine if you'd done that for an entire year. I mean, you could be sitting on thousands of dollars in collected premiums, all while patiently waiting for the right entry point. And at the end, when you do get assigned and finally do get the stock you wanted, your cost basis will be a fraction of what it might have been if you just bought the stock outright at the beginning. Instead of chasing the price with limit or good till canceled orders or trying to time the perfect dip, well, you got paid to wait. But here's the warning that most of us skip. Lowering your cost basis doesn't make a bad stock a good investment. That's because premiums only help if the underlying is still something you'd want to own long term. So your choice of company is always going to matter here. Now, let's flip the situation over to selling covered calls. Let's say you sold a $300 strike Apple call for $2 a share, but then Apple's price kept rising. The stock pushed through $300 and now it's $305. There's only 5 days to expiration. Now, you're in a bit of a pickle. You can let the shares get called away and lock in your gains, or you can roll the calls. Rolling your trades means simply buying back your existing contracts and then selling the new ones with a later expiration, a higher strike price, or both. The goal is to give the trade more time to work in your favor. But here's the thing. Rolling isn't about saving a bad trade, it's about managing a good one. And remember, adjusting trades should be tactical, not a knee-jerk reaction. This is mostly because rolling often comes with higher premiums thanks to increased time value, volatility, or just the simple fact that the stock is now closer to or in the money. Let's say you roll those $300 calls to the $320 strike. But to close that $300 strike call, you need to pay $4. Well, that's a $2 debit. But then you receive $3.50 for the new $320 strike call. Well, instead of pocketing the initial $2 premium from that old unrolled $300 strike call, now you have $1.50 instead. That 50-cent difference buys you time, flexibility, and more potential upside. If Apple stays below 320 at expiration, you keep that $1.50 and you still own your shares, which you can now use to sell more covered calls on. And if it breaks above $320 and you choose not to roll again, well, your shares get called away at $320 and you call it a day. Of course, you'll always want to consider position sizing when rolling your options, because most times the best adjustment is not to do anything at all. Regardless, rolling your trades work best when shorting options like selling covered calls, cash-secured puts, and even credit spreads. You get to defer assignment, giving you time for the stock to move in your favor while continuing to collect premium. And buying options limits risk, but it demands precision. Selling options increases probability, but demands discipline. Position sizing, correlation awareness, liquidity, and exit rules all matter much more than the strategy or the underlying itself. If you manage the position size first, plan for assignment before entering, and treat premium as a tool rather than free money, you give yourself something that retail investors almost never get: survival. And that's because in the long run, staying in the market is the goal. Barchart's option screener, an entire platform, can help you find the best trades as well as entry and exit points. If you're still new to options trading, paper or practice accounts will allow you to test strategies without the risk of losing your cold hard cash. And the time you took to watch this video isn't wasted, because now you know what to do and what to look out for, and it's going to matter so much more when real money is on the line. Now, before I go, I want to hear from you. How do you manage your risks when trading options? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like and subscribe, because it helps others find the video, it supports the channel, and it makes sure you won't miss out on our next deep dive. Well, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.